45. That's the average age of a successful startup founder, according to research from MIT. Not 25, not 30. In fact, founders in their 50s are almost twice as likely to build a successful company as founders in their 20s. Which is interesting because the cultural story we hear about entrepreneurship is often the opposite. We picture the hoodie-wearing founder, the college dropout, the 20-something chasing a big idea, and yes, I'm talking about you, Zuckerberg. But when I look back at my own experience, the data actually make a lot of sense. When I started my first business, I had nothing to lose. I didn't have a wife, I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have kids depending on my income. If the business failed, I could have easily just gone and gotten a job somewhere. I didn't even think about the risk because I wasn't really taking much of one. The stakes were low, so courage was easy to find. That's the advantage of youth. But there are downsides. I had no idea what I was doing. My experience was limited, my network was small, I had few resources, my skills were still developing. When I think back on it now, the number of things that had to go right for me to succeed was enormous. But what I lacked in experience, I made up for with time and energy. I was lucky I had lots of it to spare because I had to learn some very hard lessons on that journey. Now fast forward to the last business I co-founded in my 40s, and the dynamic was completely different. I had a business partner I had worked with before and trusted. Our network was meaningful, and many of those people actually became our first customers. Some of them even became investors. And we knew people with expertise who could help us think through problems as we were building the model. The business still required plenty of hard work and uncertainty, but the number of unknowns was dramatically lower. And I've seen the same pattern play out with many of the entrepreneurs we've helped get started. One that stands out is a guy named Mark Warner. Now, Mark had a dream of opening his own burger restaurant. The problem was, Mark had never run a restaurant. He was a marketing guy, and he knew restaurants were one of the hardest businesses to start and make successful. But Mark had something that made a huge difference. He had a network. One of his friends owned a chain of delis, and that friend helped him think through his plan before he opened. And that relationship actually ended up saving him. During his pre-opening night, Mark's head chef walked out in the middle of the dinner rush. Mark didn't even know how to make the burgers. But his friend happened to be there that night, and his friend put on an apron, stepped behind the line, and showed Mark exactly what to do. Mark survived the night and the next week, where he had to be the head chef until he could find a replacement, and through a number of other challenges, including a faulty fire system that shut him down for days. But the last time I talked with Mark, he had built a solidly profitable and stable business, and he was franchising his burger concept. Mark didn't succeed because restaurants suddenly became easy to run. He succeeded because by midlife, he had the ingredients that made starting a business more likely to work. He had resources. He used his retirement funds through a Robs and leveraged his strong credit to finance the equipment. He had relationships, including the friend who literally stepped in and saved the day on opening night. And he had experience building teams and brands that translated directly into his success and creating an amazing culture and a group of raving fans. It still wasn't easy, but Mark had the pieces in place that he simply didn't have when he was in his 20s. So when is the right time to start a business? I'll tell you, people succeed in their 20s, people succeed in their 60s. But what the data show is that getting older doesn't close the window. In many ways, it opens it. Because every year you spend building skills, relationships, and resources is another year the odds tilt a little more in your favor. That's why the average successful founder is 45. Not because they missed their chance earlier, but because by then, they finally had the pieces to make it work.